Okay, so before we move on to the next section, which is schedule, I just want to take a moment to thank Tina, Dr. Gita, and Dr. Pat for their contributions tonight. I think they're amazing, resources to the district. They've been, side by side with us every step of the way, and I am incredibly grateful to them for taking the time tonight to be with us in what is quickly becoming a much longer night than I projected. I said that this would be 3 hours, and we're at 3.5 hours and not even halfway through the workshop. So now Mr. Townsend said that they're going to race through the next section, so we'll see how that goes. And with that, I'm going to turn it over, I believe, to, is it Erin or Malia that is taking over at this point?
I certainly can start us off on this slide. This one is mostly a recall slide about the about the school start and end time. So we saw most of this content at our last meeting. There are a couple of quick updates, and we'll speak a little bit more about the first one here. So one, just have added kind of the clarity about the timing for the Paths Pre-K program, and Malia will speak even more about that program later. And then secondly, we've just added, kind of clarity on the functional life skills, the high school FLS programs, and coordinating that transportation. So those have been added here in these. Otherwise, this is consistent with what we had last time and shared with you. Let's see. Malia, you want to speak to the 3 weeks as somebody had asked about previously?
Yes. Yep. Good evening, everybody. So this is just a little bit more detail on the first 3 weeks. So as you know, we've pushed the first day of school back to September 14th. And the purpose of that is to allow us more time to plan and prepare once the full educator team is back next Monday. So this is just a little bit of a, screenshot to show you that we've got a district-wide plan that kind of mixes up both district offerings as well as school-based planning. So the first 2 weeks are going to be dedicated to what we're calling Teacher Institute. And this will be where we do that building-based and cross-district PD and collaboration and provide time for educators to plan and prepare. The schools are going to build out their own unique schedules for this Teacher Institute time, leveraging these district-wide offerings that we've developed. So right now we have 38 synchronous and asynchronous professional development offerings that are basically a mix of both required and optional PD sessions. Some are at the whole school level and some will be for individual educators. So for example, one asynchronous professional development offering we have is around outdoor learning. Another one would be health and safety protocols. These are required and will be inserted into the school-based calendar by the administration and leadership team there. And then we have other offerings such as maximizing Google Classroom or best practices for advisory. And those will be offered more as a, choose your own adventure, if you will, during the times that educators have to leverage these professional development offerings. And that will be more about people deciding where they need more support based on their skill level. So then the week of September 17th will be when we hold what we're calling student orientation. And so this will happen on Wednesday and Thursday, and will be about 3-ish hours where students will come in, the A students on Wednesday and the B students on Thursday. We'll have our buses running, and this will be an opportunity for students and teachers to practice what it will be like to bring students in with our new protocols. Students will get to meet their teacher, get acclimated to their classroom, get to see the outdoor learning classrooms, and things like that. So that will give folks a chance to try things out. And then we have the afternoons of Wednesday and Thursday as well as Friday to do kind of debriefing and course adjustments as things come up. And so we're happy to answer questions later if you want more specifics, but as we've been building out the plan of the district-wide offerings that are in line with the learning consistencies we have in the reopening plan. It's right now 9 pages long in terms of the offerings we have. And so we are very confident that we'll use up this time. And again, we want to make sure that there's ample time for teachers and educators to do their own planning and preparation where it's not all scheduled for them. So this is definitely time that will be maximized to make sure that we're prepared to launch school on the 14th. Move it forward.
So we've spoken a bit about establishing our AB cohorts. Board Member Burke, referenced the kind of potting strategies, that REC used, and so this is our kind of version of that. So, and again, part of why we are recommending the hybrid model and kind of this soft start is to be able to start in smaller, more consistent cohorts. So schools are working on establishing those groups within the structure of kind of the class assignments that they had already made, or house and kind of team assignments at the middle school in 9th grade. So broadly speaking, we are taking an alpha approach of A to K and L to Z, but we recognize this came up last and had anticipated that we know that we have a number of households in the district. I believe it's actually 177 who have siblings who may have last names, and that may stretch across different schools. So we've been able to identify that set of households. The guidance we've given school leaders is reiterated here, which says kind of the last name of the oldest sibling enrolled in PPS determines the group of the household, so that schools know as they're checking that list how to place students. And so, for example, that means, if I was the oldest in my family enrolled in PPS as a T, I would be in group B, and any younger siblings that I have, and I do have a few, if they had a different last name, they would also be assigned to group B. So just one of the other exceptions is we know that as we're trying to coordinate our programming for some of our specific student populations, students with special education program that are requiring some more specific programming, or students who are English language learners, those may be some exceptions as well that would drive placement in the programs. And then lastly, I'll say here that, we recognize, that, as has been reiterated in different ways throughout the evening, the tension we're managing is the burden that this puts on families in terms of, still having to manage childcare for a number of days of the week. And so while we recognize there may be some exceptional situations where, families have a request to switch groups, we do just want to, kind of be clear that that it's going to be challenging to be able to, honor all of those requests that come that our way. This is driven by our need to manage the cohort size in ways that conform to the size of cohorts, and managing the size of those cohorts in the context of our facilities as well as our staffing, to ensure that we're achieving the goals of the cohort strategy, which is maintaining smaller, consistent cohorts that remain with individual teachers when they're present in school. So we recognize this challenge, and school leaders will do their best, but we don't want to set up an opportunity or just set an expectation that we're going to be able to accommodate all requests. In fact, it'll be challenging in many cases to be able to do that, but we know that those needs are out there and recognize this is an extreme situation. So that is how we're approaching the cohorting, and, kind of following board decision tonight. We have a timeline teed up to ensure, broadly speaking, kind of families can expect where they would land. Cohort A would be the Monday and Tuesday in person, and cohort B would be Tuesday and Friday in person, and if there are any exceptions that schools have already identified, they'll be in communication with those families so that they know if we've needed to make adjustments around those. So that is how we're approaching establishing our smaller cohorts as part of this strategy to promote health and safety. And then lastly, we have within this was, I think, in response to some questions that came up last time about how we would approach just evaluating this, and certainly Principal Pierce referenced this a little bit earlier from the high school perspective. So, and we recognize, that at the high school level, that is where, kind of consistent with the New York Times data that the superintendent shared, where we have our most kind of restricted opening. That's the place where we're, obviously, as we're familiar, and we'll talk a little bit more in the next section when we get to kind of programming, the 10th through 12th grade program, where we're primarily virtual, except for the Learning Center. We do want to be monitoring that. We recognize the need. We do recognize the need to, evaluate as we are going about our capacity to be able to increase the amount of in-school instruction. So we have, kind of articulated that consistent with the timeline that we've set for elementary school in terms of scaling up to the 5 days, that we would be evaluating our readiness to be increasing the capacity for in-person instruction for high school students along those same lines. We are confident in the program that we have laid out for middle school. And so, we are looking at the end of the first trimester, which is in November, around evaluating our readiness to increase to 5 days at that time. And so all of that remains kind of contingent upon Cumberland County remaining green. Obviously, we've had discussion about, the distinctions of Portland versus Cumberland County, but broadly speaking, that's the broad, statewide metric we'll continue to use in addition to looking at our local data that doesn't give us necessarily the color coding. If Cumberland County changes to yellow or red, as a community, that's when we would anticipate transition to remote learning at that time. And so, that's separate and distinct from what you've heard, in the prior section about if there are specific instances, at various schools or within schools where there may need to be a shorter period of remote learning as a response to any specific cases. This is more of kind of a broad context if overall the outbreak at a community level, has increased to such a level that would warrant the whole system transitioning to remote learning. So I think that is the end of our scheduling section. So we'll pause for a moment on that before we get deeper into programming. Malia, go ahead.
I just wanted to do a quick clarification. I think, Aaron, as you were talking, it might be me because it is getting late, but for the AB cohort days, I wanted to make sure it was clear that A is Monday, Thursday, and B would be Tuesday, Friday. I'm not sure if that's how it came out, so I just wanted to clarify that in case there's confusion.
Thank you very much. Yes, I apologize. Spoke.
All right. All right. So if we have any questions on the scheduling section, Ms. Morioni?
Hi, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, when you keep referring to the trimesters, can you just give the months that you're talking about for trimesters?
Sure. The end of the first trimester is in November, is in the middle of November. I think it'll be pushed back. We're doing the accounting of days given the 2 week, given if the semester or the year is delayed by 2 weeks, we're pushing it back 1 week. So I'm sorry, I don't have the date off the top of my head, but it's about mid-November is the trimester. And
then it goes till...
And then the next trimester goes through until, I think it's like early March. And then because we had, if you'll recall, we actually had, it was synced up relatively closely this past year when we went to remote learning was the end of the second trimester. And so in that context, this past year, the third trimester was essentially the equivalent of when we were in remote learning. So that the third trimester of the year is generally mid-March through the end of the year.
The second trimester ends on March 12th.
March 12th, okay. And then I apologize I just have never really recognized that we have trimesters. And does that also equate to how the grading is done by trimesters?
And so, yes.
So I'm thinking like with Deering had semesters, you had spring semester, so yeah.
Yep. All of our pre-K 8, so all of our elementary and middle schools, plus Casco Bay operate on trimesters. Deering and Portland operate on semesters.
And then will Deering and Portland move to trimesters, or?
Nope, they're maintaining their quarter and semester system.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
But I do, just, in case this slipped by, we are saying that we would reassess the situation for the high school. We would not wait until the semester, which is what we had said at our previous meeting, that we would look at reassessing that at the same time that we make the transition to in-person learning for our elementary students around Indigenous People Day.
And so date for that is?
Early to mid-October. I think it's like October 10th or 11th.
So to clarify again, the October 10th or 11th, that's when we may consider, if all's going well, we may consider more in-person classes for our high schoolers?
Correct.
Correct, yes. It would be the 9th.
October 9th. And what is considered going well? I mean, what is
generally
considered
that we are green, still in the state designation system, so that's a precursor. In addition to that, we have a sense that things have gone well with the enforcement of our protocols, so that all of those things that we've talked about in layers are actually being internalized and followed, and we haven't had significant cases registered.
Thank you. And maybe you're about to get to this, but what do you, for the high schools, do you already have envisioned a plan of in-person? Would it be all 5 days, or would it be like 1 or 2 days back in person for high schoolers?
We're going to move into programming now, and that
would be a
question to ask at that time. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I don't see any. Ms. Bondo.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just have a clarification question on the timing between for the high school on the learning center. I see the instructions blocks is ending at 12:30, and then the learning center is 1:15 to 3:30. So when I look at the gap between each, just 45 minutes, and did we consider then the student need to ride the metro and be over there? If they have enough time to meet the teachers and who counseling and have a time to go through what they need to do?
Yes, that was, in fact, explicitly part of why it is 45 minutes, was in consideration of some of that transition. That's longer than the high school lunch periods have been historically. And also recognizing that we anticipate, that many students will be coming to, that we wanted to have enough time for the 9th graders, who will be the ones primarily there in the morning, be able to grab their lunches and go. Some 9th graders may be staying for some of the learning center time as well, but so that there wasn't a kind of crossover of significant groups of student population, so that then the 10th and 12th graders would have time to arrive, be able to get lunch if they're going to do that prior to the learning center time, and then be able to access that in the afternoon. So that was
yeah, for the students are living a little far from the schools. How did you make the arrangement with the metro? I mean, the riding time for them to be able to reach their schools.
They would have to leave in time to be
right
at the school.
Yeah, so those 45 minutes is good enough. Then we estimate that they can be able to access the center, the learning center.
But those kids are not in school prior to that. So they would just be taking the metro to come
exactly,
to school.
But they have the institution, they have that block. They're going to be in the remotely until 12:30, right? That's what I try to understand. And then the one want to go to the learning center, they have to leave their home and ride the bus if they have to ride the bus and come to the center between that timing. And I see that's what I want to understand. Do they have enough time to go? Because they're riding the bus. That's a public transportation. I mean, you can be there, you can miss your time, you can miss the bus, or you can make it on time. So everything is just in relationship with the timing and for them to be able to access on time and to have maybe at least 2 hours or 1 hour and a half to be able to access each other and discussion. I just need to make it, and we took that one into consideration.
Yeah. Generally, 45 minutes is the outside of the length of a metro bus ride. That's, some of the longest rides are 45 minutes. Obviously, if you miss your bus, the one that was going to get you there on time, you are going to be late. For Learning Center. Learning Center is, largely more informal, so it would be less significant. But that's an important consideration, right?
Okay. Right. Thank you, Secretary.
We tried to build for that, but it's not perfect. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wanda. Mr. Burke?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've been trying to look for the state math for when they choose a designation. Does anybody know when a county would go from green to yellow, what threshold needs to be crossed? Okay.
It's multiple, they've not been, super transparent about it. It's a number of things. There is some language about what those factors are somewhere in that document. But
yeah. Okay, that's helpful. That I'm not missing it at least. And then I understand that it's not necessarily A plus B. But so building on Member Moriarty's question earlier and a question I asked last meeting, I'm finding myself wanting the visual decision flow chart. COVID's case positive. Is this true? Yes or no? This happens. That emergency protocol. And I find that there's either like a lot of tacit knowledge in you, superintendent, or our medical staff, and they're able to talk through it, but we still don't have that protocol that every staff would be like, this is what happened. And is that part of, because it depends, there's just so much that will change depending on CDC guidance when a case arises?
I think to try to be as explicit as possible, I think we have said that if we were to, if the state designation were to downgrade our status, so from green to yellow, clearly if it went to red, that we would, then act for us to go to red. So I think that, but besides that, that was the whole conversation that we had earlier about, like, would you shut down if you had one kid? Would you contact trace or isolate students if there was one student who tested positive? Would you shut down that classroom and all that? That's what we don't have an algorithm for that. That is, I think Tina, I know you're still here. If there's anything you want to add to that, we don't have that, a decision tree. The one branch of the decision tree that we can tell you is if we go to yellow or red, we would go to red. But other than that, at the individual situation level, it's individual case by case.
Okay, that was the summary I needed at this point. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all. I have a couple of quick questions on the, excuse me, I guess one thing, and I'm asking this to get it clarified because I've had it asked of me through emails and through other folks. The rationale for the AB cohort for Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, versus, for example, having Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Can we just go over that really quickly? What the rationale was for that? And I'm assuming it's a quick explanation. My second question would be equally short, I hope.
Sure. So in regards to the switch, if you'll remember, actually in June, from the original work of our design team that was working in May and June, the original recommendation was AA, off day BB. That had been informed at that time from that team of anticipating that we would want to have a day of deeper cleaning in between the student cohorts. And at that time, the instructional thinking was that we wanted to try and establish a little bit of rhythm with students by having them there on consecutive days. As we dug in more deeply over the summer in our work groups, in the various work groups that we had, and again, we had an extensive number of educators and school leaders involved in that as they considered operationalizing that. And as we got deeper into it and learned more about the cleaning protocols, we decided to move to the AB off day AB, and that was driven by two reasons, at least, and Malia, weigh in if I miss anything. But one is the update from our cleaning and our facilities team that the cleaning protocols were not going to be different on Wednesday, that we were going to hold ourselves to the level of kind of cleaning and disinfecting on a daily basis in terms of what needed to be happened. So that kind of removed the rationale of keeping a consistent cohort of kids there 2 days in a row and then having the deep clean on Wednesday. So that was one reason. And then what that opened up from an instructional perspective is, as we started to talk about what the experience would be of managing a hybrid environment where you have kids in person and then off, is that the recommendation from teachers at that time was that set up a more natural instructional routine in which you're able to kind of launch lessons, support kids to get started, allow them to have time to explore and do additional work on their remote day, and then be able to loop back more quickly, right, to be able to have feedback, revise, and move forward in the lesson. So it set up a more natural instructional rhythm was the recommendation of teachers. And so ultimately it was out of those work groups that recommended we go to the AB model, moving away from the AA-BB. And I think the last thing I'd say is, I guess, was from a like SEL perspective and concerns around seeing kids for 2 days and then not seeing them for 5 days felt challenging. And so this provides a little more frequent contact with students, or a little bit more regular cadence of contact instead of 2 days on, 5 days off. So those were some of the rationales from the work groups this summer.
Thank you. So really appreciate that. That's helpful. And I felt like that question had come up several times, and I was able to add some of primarily the cleaning part, but I think the academic part at the end there makes a lot of sense. Then my other question is about the orientation week on September 7th. What are we calling them? The run-through days. Those are not mandatory. There won't be attendance on those days taken. Can we just talk about just lightly about what those two run-through days will look like and what the requirements would be?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the specifics in terms of what the days will look like. Like I mentioned, they're going to be short days. We will run transportation. The plan is to start the days at their typical start time, but to end the days early. They would be strongly encouraged, but not required, because it's not yet the official start to school. We acknowledge and recognize some families may have made plans. We think it's a great opportunity for families, or excuse me, not families, but students, to get a sense of how things will go, and as well as for us and for educators, but not required. Strongly encouraged.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's all I had. So I guess we can, I don't see any other hands raised, so we can get into the programming piece.
All right, Great. So this is a slide that we shared at the meeting 2 weeks ago. And so I'm not going to go through the specifics here, but just as a reminder, we developed a set of learning experience consistencies that we do expect to be implemented across all schools and that are applicable across all of our scenarios. And this is in line with our guiding principles around coherence and equity that the superintendent started with in the very beginning of this workshop. And it's also in response to overwhelming feedback from families and from teachers that people are looking for more consistency in terms of the experience. So the following program updates that we're going to share this evening really are deeper dives into areas that have evolved since our conversation 2 weeks ago, or that are in response to where we've heard significant feedback or questions coming up, and so we wanted to address them more directly. So you can move it forward here. So first, I know many are excited to hear a little bit more about outdoor learning, and so we wanted to start there. So originally we had talked about striving to have 2 outdoor classrooms per building. At this point, given the work that's gone into looking at this and given the feedback and the energy from educators in the community, we are intending to maximize the number of classrooms per building based on the plans we get from the architects. Unfortunately, I don't have the final numbers per building today. Those are coming to us this week, as are the materials needed and the associated costs. So we're anticipating getting that final data by the end of this week. But we do know that buildings can, I think most, if not all of our buildings, have the capacity for more than 2 outdoor classrooms, and it will be our intent to maximize the potential. In addition to that, we're looking at and talking about the use of what we call informal outdoor spaces. So these would be areas that don't necessarily have the classroom set up with shade or buckets, but are outside of the building where folks can do things like snack breaks and things like that. In addition, we will provide required district-wide professional development around how to teach outdoors. I had mentioned just a moment ago about the August Educator Institute, and that we have the synchronous and asynchronous offerings, some of which are optional, some of which are required. This is one of the required professional development offerings because all educators will have some time outside. So we want to make sure people understand how to manage a classroom outside. Brooke Teller, who's our interim outdoor learning coordinator, is collaborating with community partners and parents, actually, who have expertise in this area, and they are together designing professional development that schools will roll out across our sites. And then in addition to that, each building will have a stipended outdoor learning building liaison. So this is a job that we've created for the educators who are listening. Tomorrow when we send out the bulletin, we'll be sharing the job description and process for applying and raising your hand if you're interested. This person will coordinate the outdoor learning work at the building and liaise with Brooke Teller, who's working with the parents and community partners as well. And then finally, Brooke is collaborating closely with parents and community partners to activate parent volunteers to support the launch. We've had tremendous interest from parents and family members across the district. And so she'll work with folks to help secure donations. There's a plan to get groups together to build the easels that will go outside to help gather materials, etc. So we're excited about what we hope and anticipate will be an hands-on-deck community approach to helping us get these launched for the start of school. And then you can move it forward, Erin. This is just, we thought this would be interesting for folks to see. This is a sample snapshot of one elementary school, and it's a visual site assessment that was developed by the architects that are working with us and maps out where we could set up classrooms on this particular campus. And as I mentioned, we'll be getting the full plans for all schools later this week. I also wanted to speak to our capacity to spend time outdoors. I understand some members are interested in having us establish a minimum threshold expectation for time outside. Brooke Teller, the interim outdoor learning coordinator, who I've mentioned, did do some work with some educators to do a preliminary analysis at a couple of our elementary schools to evaluate what might be possible. So together they looked at the elementary schedule, the initial plans from the architects, and they applied the assumption that we'll also leverage the informal outdoor spaces for things like snack break. And based on this, they could find a path toward being able to spend about half of the day outside. And with that said, I do want to be honest that we're not yet in a position to fully commit to a specific amount of time outside, as we still need to review the site-specific architectural plans, the schedules. We need to take into account educator comfort and their need for accommodations for being outside. And then we also need to tease out plans for responding to inclement weather. So want you all to know that while I don't think we're yet positioned to say we can do that fully on day one, we are highly committed to maximizing our potential to be outside, given the health and safety benefits, the teaching and learning opportunities, and the desire from the community to make this a cornerstone of our reopening plans. So as I described, we're putting the resources and capacity in place to ramp this up and to build our outdoor learning endurance, as some of our community providers call it. So you can move us forward from there. I'm sure folks will want to come back for questions on that, but we have a few more updates that we wanted to provide here. So the next is just a brief note on elementary specials, because I know folks have had some questions about how we are going to manage this. So our elementary specials are going to be offered on our in-person days. The specials will be scheduled in blocks of time so as to manage our specials teachers' exposure to a limited number of student cohorts. So I think some had been concerned that potentially they would be cycling through all of the classrooms and getting interacting with all cohorts of students in a given week. And instead of doing that, students will have a chunk of time that they take art, a chunk of time that they take music. And so more of a block schedule as compared to what we typically do, which is, you might get one of each special each week. And so that's designed to, be mindful of the cohorts and the exposure across cohorts, and then also for the specials teachers. We're striving for a schedule that includes a 45-minute block for specials on all 4 in-person days. Based on our analysis so far, that will require adding 10 full-time employees who are specials teachers in order to fully execute that commitment across all of our schools. So just wanted to make that transparent to people. And then I think, Erin, you're going to speak a little bit to the 10 through 12 programming and the questions that have surfaced in particular around our learning center there.
Yep. So, we know that this has been an element of our proposal that's, provoked significant questions. So wanted to spend a few minutes kind of trying to clarify. Also, I want to acknowledge and appreciate Principal Sheila Jepson and co-principals Allison Dame and Dr. Abdullahi Ahmed, who I've invited in as panelists just, as we get to questions for them to be able to contribute as I know, and as well acknowledge Mr. Pierce is celebrating his father's birthday, so isn't able to join us for this section of the agenda. So, we wanted to, again, just kind of position why we had made the initial recommendation that we did to not bring back 10th through 12th graders in a similar way as 9th grade or our other grades in terms of the AB model. So, and this really reflects a conservative approach to kind of build our capacity with health and safety protocols. As you saw in the student focus groups, they themselves indicated concern with their peers being able to implement and kind of adhere to those protocols. And given particularly at Deering and Portland, with being the largest schools in the district, us wanting to be able to ensure with smaller groups that we're able to sufficiently develop the routines and develop the behaviors that allow us to successfully adhere to that to make it a safe place. I think we've all seen, examples of bringing back too many kids too early in other environments around the country. And I think, given the map that the superintendent shared, those were generally seemingly in places that were red, and quickly led to closures for various periods of time in high schools around the country. Obviously, the one in Georgia is the most specific one. So this does reflect a conservative approach. It doesn't in any way neglect and consider the needs of our 10th through 12th graders, right? We're very sensitive to the fact that it is critical time for them as well. At the same time, we recognize ninth grade is a very particular year, as we've learned from our BAR grant study. Supporting ninth graders in their transition into high school is a critical juncture to ensure they remain on a pathway to graduation. So trying to balance those kind of multiple needs was what informed this. At the same time, trying to make some adjustments to be responsive to the feedback we've gotten over the past few weeks. That being one, as we've mentioned, just more proactively assessing our progress towards this to have a earlier time frame that we might consider increasing the amount of high school instruction. So, we have moved up that timeline significantly from what we had presented at the last meeting, so that, we're not, at the outset kind of setting for our Portland and Deering High students in particular, a kind of full semester, half of their year kind of benchmark before we might consider increasing that capacity. And then the other is trying to grow our programming in terms of how we are going to implement the Learning Center model. And I think, this whole, scenario of responding to the pandemic certainly is pressing our capacity to do things in novel and different ways. But I would assert that that is most pronounced at trying to manage that at the high school level in terms of adhering to the protocols at the high school, with the high school construction, particularly our comprehensive high schools at Deering and Portland, and trying to utilize the Learning Center model as a way to be responsive to student needs and provide supports that we weren't able to do in the spring, and be able to both, have improved experiences with their virtual classes and to be able to provide these additional opportunities for academic and social connection and supports in different ways than we have ever really functioned as a school. So, and I think we have, there's the potential of long-term benefits of the ways that we can be creative in finding these supports, but just want to acknowledge that we are really growing our capacity and asking these schools to reinvent themselves in ways that are, significant for all of them, and really appreciate the work that the school leaders, the leadership teams, and the educators at those schools are leaning into that challenge that in front of them. So, just a quick couple of notes here. So again, a reminder that the proposal for 10th through 12th grade is that all courses are delivered synchronously 4 days per week, primarily from 9:30 to 12:30. I say primarily because that is the consistent schedule for Deering and Portland, because they have now are operating on a similar schedule, kind of in relationship to the pandemic and in relationship to some of the state guidance around cohorting. Both schools will be operating this year in kind of the 4-block schedule to be able to kind of simplify and reduce the immediate number of course offerings and be on a more consistent schedule for those two schools, since they're both on the semester track. That was a transition specifically for Portland High that they're making to be able to be responsive to the pandemic. So, so that will be consistent because Casco Bay retains a block schedule that rotates over 2 days. Their students will also experience in 10th through 12th grade essentially the same amount of instructional time, but 2 days a week it's a little bit shorter, and 2 days a week it's a little bit longer, owing to the specifics about their schedule. So, but their primary course delivery will be synchronously, again, speaking to the experiences we've learned about how to improve that for students. So then the Learning Center model, so again, this is designed to provide academic and social emotional supports. It's scheduled for 4 days a week from 1:15 to 3:30. What we are working towards is that all students will be scheduled for the Learning Center time at least once per week. The schools are approaching that in somewhat different ways, but all 10th through 12th graders will have access at least once per week. And certainly there's the opportunity for students to access it, additionally beyond that. But we've heard that as kind of an asking commitment of a minimum in terms of opportunity for students to be able to provide support, and certainly responsive to some of the concerns that were raised by students, that making sure the kids that really need it are going to be expected to be there and be able to be supported. So these supports will look like small group support for academic courses, which will include the range of our courses. So this is not designed for just a specific profile of student to access support. So students who are taking AP courses and would like to get support in that course material and work would have the opportunity to be able to come in for some of that small group support with their teachers for those courses, but also for others in regular college prep classes. So that's one element of Learning Center that'll be that is part of the opportunity. Additionally, in addition to those classes, we do have scheduled into these times some additional support classes for some of our identified student populations. So specifically for students with special who have IEPs, or some of our higher level English language learners, they will have some support classes to complement their core classes that they're taking to provide them support, and those will be scheduled in as well during some of this Learning Center time. The advisory, so the last part of kind of the 10th through 12th grade programming is growing the amount of advisory that we're offering to students across the 3 high schools, again centered in some of the feedback from students and families and educators even over the past, from the spring experience, to have that kind of a consistent, dedicated adult point of contact. So all students will participate in an advisory-like structure called different things at each school, as is laid out here, at least 2 times a week, and that'll be a combination of kind of virtual and in-person meetings, and those may be, part of what is kind of their scheduled time during the Learning Center time. So for most of the schools, that is likely to happen during some of that Learning Center time when they're there. I think that's, so those are a few of the updates around that. And again, we are trying to balance a number of tensions to be able to kind of grow our capacity to bring our high school students back. To the question earlier about what it could look like, we haven't, we want to see how this goes, right? We're launching Learning Center. That's not a model that we've implemented in this kind of way before. So in terms of what the scale up could look like, post-Indigenous Peoples Day, given that Cumberland County remains green, and we feel we've been successful in building capacity to adhere to our health and safety protocols, and have not had any substantive, kind of incidents of, COVID exposure within our schools. I think there are a couple of ways that increase could look. So it could be starting to bring back students for in-person academic instructional time. Particularly, that could work in the model for at Portland and Deering, where maybe some of the 10th grade classes are now being offered in person. It could be more regular rotations during the Learning Center time. So I think there are a couple of ways that we've talked about initially about what that could look like, but we're eager to get students back in and launch this structure and continue to learn. I think, Principal Pierce, named it in his opening earlier, which is this is the best thinking we've done. We've been working really hard at thinking through all the complexities that our comprehensive high schools offer around this to try and balance these needs. And we're proud of this plan and recognize we're going to learn a bunch of things as soon as we start to execute, and we'll continue to iterate and grow to be able to meet students' needs as we move forward. So.
Great. So next we want to talk a little bit about the remote academy. So you'll recall we shared this slide a couple of weeks ago where we indicated that any family would have the option of choosing fully remote in either our green or yellow scenarios. So if families are not comfortable sending their children to school in the hybrid, or if we're back full time, they will have the option this year to access the fully remote learning for the first trimester, and we'll reevaluate as we go. This would be a district run program for pre-K through 8th, and then high schools will be running high school specific programs given the difference in their structure, as Aaron just elaborated on. So in terms of the additional updates, Aaron, if you want to move us forward, three things we wanted to provide a little bit more detail on this evening. One is around just how to make a commitment to participate in what we're calling Remote Academy. Secondly, giving you just a brief snapshot of what a day and a week in the life will look like. And then thirdly, we want to talk a little bit about how we're creating classes and maintaining connections to neighborhood schools, which we know is a big priority for families and for us as well. So first, in terms of opting into Remote Academy, we're asking that families sign up by Monday, August 24th, so that we have a clear understanding of how many students are going to opt into the Remote Academy. If you've already indicated your interest through our surveys, we will do an email follow-up to confirm that that is still your intent to send your child to Remote Academy. If you have not done that, tomorrow we'll be sending out a sign-up form, which will be emailed out, will be available on our website. And you can go in and sign up and indicate that your child is going to be attending Remote Academy for the first trimester that way as well. So once students are registered into Remote Academy, they'll stay there for the trimester. So like with everything we're discussing in this plan, we are reevaluating where things are at trimester by trimester. But once a student has opted into this plan, they would stay there for the trimester. We do discourage the transitions in and out of Remote Academy just because logistically that would be incredibly difficult for us to manage in terms of how carefully we're managing the cohorts within the buildings. And we're also mindful of the community and the relationships that are getting built. But we will review requests to join Remote Academy or transition back to the hybrid plan on a case-by-case basis. And approval of that will be contingent upon our ability to actually pull that off in terms of staffing that appropriately. So next, we want to just give you a little bit of a snapshot. So this is a second grade example of what the Remote Academy schedule might look like. So there's a few things that I wanted to highlight here that speak to the district-wide learning consistencies that we talked about implementing across our yellow, red, and green scenarios. So first, in this example, you see that there's a daily synchronous morning meeting. So every single day, students would have their morning meeting with their teacher, and that would be synchronous. You can't see on this particular example because this is just second grade, but if you saw the master schedule, you'd also notice that we have staggered times in terms of grade spans in the case that families have multiple elementary age students and we're not yet at the one-to-one device. So we've really considered that in how we mapped out this schedule. The morning meetings will include explicit social emotional learning programming. You'll see throughout this week that there's a mix of synchronous and asynchronous instruction, but that every day students are getting that synchronous instruction. That's something we heard loud and clear from families that that was inconsistent and that students really missed that opportunity for instruction from their teacher on a daily basis. Part of the expectation that will be embedded into this with the synchronous instruction is opportunities for students to have discourse with each other throughout the week. That's a huge pedagogical value that we have and is reflected in a lot of our curriculum. There's also a consistent daily schedule. And so synchronous instruction happens at the same time each day. So for families that are trying to plan and schedule for students who need that routine, they'll get into a rhythm and a habit there in terms of when they can expect to log in for their morning meeting, log in for their class, et cetera, throughout the day. There's an expectation, and you can't see this in this kind of snapshot in front of you, but there will be an expectation of regular feedback at least twice per week directly to students from their teachers. And then there's time built into the schedule for small group supports and or for office hours with teachers. so that there's an opportunity for students to get more of that targeted small group or one-on-one support. Specials are included in the remote academy, and you'll see that there's explicit call out for reading, math, those core subject areas. You won't see in this particular snapshot, if I recall correctly, that something like science or social studies is called out. But those subjects will be covered in an interdisciplinary way, primarily through the literacy instruction. So when we share the sign up for families that want to sign up for this that haven't already indicated their interest, we'll be including with that this sample schedule as well as a middle school example tomorrow, so folks can get kind of a better picture. But we wanted tonight just give you a sense that this is more fleshed out, and this is, just to be clear, reflective of what we would do if we moved into our red fully remote scenario district-wide. So that's the basis for how we're thinking about the remote academy schedule. And then finally, just an update in terms of creating the remote academy classes. We are going to have an elementary and middle school remote academy teacher leader. These will also be stipended roles. They're being posted in our bulletin that goes out to educators tomorrow. So these people who can apply for this are people who have approved accommodations to work remotely. And so this will be a position that's fully dedicated to kind of administration and coaching around this academy, so full release to do that. And we'll be working in partnership with our Director of Curriculum and Instruction to kind of oversee this. In developing the classes, we're going to be matching students with teacher backgrounds. So that's why we're doing this at the district level, to make sure that we can kind of deploy teacher expertise and background with the students based on the need. But we are going to make sure to prioritize neighborhood school connections as feasible. So we know that that's a preference, of course, from families to have students with an educator from their neighborhood or home school to the extent possible. So that will be the first kind of variable we consider when we're matching up kids, also taking, of course, into account the teacher's background. So I don't think that we can absolutely promise that every child in remote academy will have a teacher with the appropriate background who's from their home school. It's about all how these puzzle pieces fit together, but we will value trying to prioritize that as we're able. And then finally, students included in the, or students who are in remote academy will still be included in all of their neighborhood school communications and notifications around family events. So anything that happens at the school, kind of whole school level, that's about building community and connection. The students in this remote academy will remain connected in that way. And then they'll also have their community building that happens in the remote academy. So that's how we're going to go about doing the classes. And then I think next, Superintendent, I think you're going to speak a little bit to our technology update.
Yeah, just very quickly, we obviously know that there's the potential for us being in remote status at some point during the year, and clearly for the students that are in the remote academy, they will be in that status. So just wanted to provide a brief update on where we are with the distribution of devices. We expect that we will start the year with across the board for middle school and high school, we will be 1-to-1, as we have been in the past. And there will be a maximum of 3 siblings to 1 device to start the school year. There will be very few cases, I'm told, of 3-to-1. And, our goal is really to minimize the number, because we recognize how challenging that would be. And it would not be for students that are in remote, that would be for students who are, in our hybrid in-school, in-person learning for the time. We are planning a staff device refresh, and because of the procurement issues, we believe that will happen before we are able to get the new 1-to-1 devices for all of our students. And so as those staff devices get refreshed, we will redeploy whatever we bring back from staff and give that to those students who are in the 3-to-1, 2-to-1 scenarios to try to get as close to 1-to-1 with them. And then we're reasonably confident at this point that by mid-October, we will be able to bring in the new devices, collect the old devices, and have all of our students on our new consistent platform across the board. There is a caveat there in terms of our ability to get the protective cases, which could delay some of the distribution. But assuming that we get that in place, we are targeting mid-October to be able to get everybody, on new devices 1-to-1. And in addition to the device work, we have an additional 700 hotspots in addition to the ones that are currently deployed that are available for making sure that anybody who doesn't have internet access would be able to get that. So that's our procurement of technology update.
So just touching on a few of the other programs that we have, just to make sure we're, kind of being clear about what's happening at all of the schools and programs in our system. So one, just want to acknowledge at the island schools, as the superintendent said, the island schools, or the island zip codes, have not had any COVID cases. So the Peaks and Cliff will be beginning the year with essentially what we're anticipating all elementaries, or we're hoping all elementaries will transition to by mid-October. So they'll be doing 4 hours per day, 5 days per week for in-person instruction, except for Cliff Island on Friday, which has been true for a long time, where they've had a bit of an abbreviated day on on Fridays at Cliff for a long time to accommodate travel to the mainland for doctor's appointments and such, as I understand it. The students as well, though, will have specials available asynchronously every day for 45 minutes. And so, that aligns to the kind of 4-hour and 45-minute amount of instructional time that students at mainland schools will be experiencing. So that's the plan for island schools. Our PATHS team, so Kevin Stilfen, our director at PATHS, has done an awesome job with an amazingly complex challenge of how to collaborate amongst all the different sending schools with different hybrid reopening plans and so forth. So PATHS will be operating 2 sessions per day, 5 days per week. So like they have historically, there's a bit of a longer bit of time in between the sessions, to allow for additional cleaning and to accommodate some of the transportation issues. He is doing an amazingly complex amount of scheduling and coordination with those sending schools to have kind of consistent cohorts of students in the different programs coming from those schools. So that we'll be able to continue to identify and trace as necessary, if necessary, any contacts, and so that there's regular and predictable cohorts there. All of our schools, I neglected to say this earlier on the 10 through 12, but part of our scheduling for our PPS schools was ensuring that our students as well could continue to access PATHS programming. So in addition to their homeschool-based programming, we have a number of students. We're the largest provider of students across our 3 Portland schools to PATHS. Will be able to access in-person instruction from PATHS as well as some virtual instruction. A call out, and Malia will speak more around the community partner pre-Ks, but the pre-K program there will be operating from 8:45 to 1:30 on an AB schedule. So, and then lastly, for my part, before I give it to Malia, Adult Ed is planning for the fall to be in online classes with some in-person or one-to-one small group activities for these, for intake orientation and other supports. So, Malia?
Great. And I'll just add one other point to the PATHS pre-K, which I know some board members had asked about. We will not have the high school students in the PATHS pre-K classroom for the first month, and we'll reevaluate after then. So just to be explicit about that. In terms of the community partner pre-Ks, we have 3 community partners at this point. And so they're planning to start on September 9th instead of the 14th. So while they have a later start date than a typical year to account for making sure teachers have the time for proper training and planning, they are able to launch sooner than us because they've been running programming this summer, as you heard Lori speak about, and so they're already in a groove. And because they're going to be returning to 5 days a week without a gradual hybrid scale-up, it's just a little bit complex for them, less complex for them in that regard. And on that note, we're following the lead of our community partners for the 5-day schedule since that's their approach. So this is only specific to the community partner sites. We're engaged in direct individual conversations with the educators in these programs to ensure that they feel comfortable with the arrangements, and we would make accommodations for them if needed. To date, the receptivity has been very positive based on the conversations our director of pre-K programs, Sue Chevalier, has had with people. So this means that families in these programs will have the option of 5 days with the possibility of before and after care that can be arranged with each site. Also just wanted to mention that the partner sites are running tight health and safety protocols like us. Again, you heard Lori speak to this a little bit. I do want to note, though, that they are accountable to DHHS, whereas we are accountable to the DOE. And so there are some differences in the guidelines, and so therefore we did a crosswalk of all health and safety protocols and did identify where there were any discrepancies between the guidelines that they've been following and what we're required to follow and what we have included in our plan. And so in general, they're very similar. Partner sites, like you heard Lori speak about, will wear masks like we will. They are doing the daily temperature checks, which we're not yet. So they have some protocols in place which are, a little bit more enhanced than ours. And the place where we've had the most deep conversation is in regards to social distancing. It's possible that they're not able to adhere to all the social distancing parameters we've outlined at all times, though they are actively working to adhere to social distancing requirements to the extent possible, which is what the guidelines from CDC and the DOE call for. In addition, our facilities team is visiting the sites this week to consult on any recommended physical distancing enhancements that we can support them on in their classrooms, in their public pre-K classrooms specifically. And then families who are assigned to these programs will be able to review the site-specific guidelines, and they'll need to sign an agreement with their sites, which is something that each of these partner sites has been doing with the families that have been participating to date. So you heard again from Lori that so far they've been reporting great success with bringing students back and being able to manage the new protocols. So we're excited that we continue to be able to have this mixed delivery model and this opportunity for the families that are assigned to these 3 pre-K sites. And then Deb is actually going to do a brief update on special education. We spoke last week to some modifications or just additional accommodations we're doing for special ed, but I did not speak directly to our gradual scale up of the in-person days, and so Deb's going to jump in and just give a little bit of detail on that.
Yes, so this slide just captures the 3 big areas of district programs that we have K-12. So each of those columns is an area, the Life Skills Bridge program, K-12, the Beach and Autism programs at K-5 at Ocean Ave, and the program at Portland High, and then the Breathe program, K-12. And what we're proposing is a staggered entry where we would divide the students in each of those classrooms and programs in half to create 2 much smaller cohorts. It would provide a consistent small cohort that we would keep the same staff with the same students and keep that in place for a period of 2 weeks. And then we would reevaluate that after we get the report from the state to see where they're landing and see how we're doing. And at that point, at week 3, we would consider going to 3 days. And then by weeks 4 and 5, possibly consider going to a 4-day week. And then if we do end up in a green situation, we would either maintain 4 days a week, or if we're cleared to go totally green like the elementary schools would be, we would propose that our life skills and our other district programs attend 5 days a week. And we did this because I think, well, it was on the recommendation from our medical folks, but it's really a low and slow approach so that we can monitor, so that we can train staff and students. These are students that are going to need additional training in just how to organize and be safe in school. And it's just the right way to go. I don't know. Do you need anything more, Malia?
No, I think if folks have questions, Deb, you'll stick with us here, but thank you so much. And I think that wraps up the updates we had around programming.
All right. All right, thank you. So we'll go through it again. If we have questions, use the raise your hand feature and I'll call you. Ms. Bigdor?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start maybe where we ended up, looking at the Bridge and Breathe programs. So my question is, and Beach, I'm sorry. My question is that I've heard some concerns that we might not be adequately staffed in those programs, and that if we're bringing on new people to fill positions, that there won't be capacity to train those new people. Can you talk a little bit, Deb, about staffing?
Yeah, we do have, especially in one of our classrooms, a number of staff. We have 5 staff in one classroom who have asked for accommodations, but not all those accommodations are to work remotely. So they're different accommodations for different staff. We are going to have 3 additional ed techs at the elementary level in the Bridge program at Talbot, and we will need 1 additional ed tech at the Deering Life Skills program. Breathe, I believe, may need 2 positions. We're not sure yet about the accommodations that are being asked for there. And I don't foresee that it's going to be a problem, training staff, because we'll have 3 weeks to train staff, So I really don't think that's going to be a problem. It will be a problem if, we have more people who have requests for accommodations. But as of right now, we just reviewed our list with HR last week, and it's looking like we didn't have, as many staff that are asking for accommodations as we thought.
And I would just add, thank you so much, Deb, but we're going to talk in a minute about the staffing, and so any issues for these programs would be similar to the issues we face globally, but just want to underscore Deb's point that the team has done a deep analysis of what would be needed to pull off everything that's proposed in ensuring enhanced health and safety protocols. And it does require that not just the accommodations, but on top of the staff, we have to add a handful of ed techs that is included in our proposed budget that we're working through as a team to prioritize in terms of the additional revenue we have for reopening.
Thank you. My next question is about starts with elementary school specials and just making sure I'm understanding what the plan is. And so as I understand it, rather than, for instance, having a given cohort having art one day, music the next day, etc., you might have art for a few weeks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in that way, we're limiting that teacher's exposure to different cohorts of students.
That's exactly the rationale.
Okay, thank you. And then my question is, with EL teachers, how are we similarly limiting teachers' exposure to different cohorts of students?
So they're going to be in cohorts as well, but I know Carlos Gomez, who's our Director of Language Development, is on the line. Do you want to speak to that directly, Carlos?
Sure. That is basically the idea. ELL will be in cohorts with EL teachers, the ILD students, so limiting their exposure to the number of students.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that might look like?
So, for example, an EL teacher might have cohort of 10 students, say, an IELD intensive English language learners. And when those students are in their A day, for example, on the B day, the EL teacher would be just with that cohort. So they might have one cohort on A days, one cohort on B days, limiting themselves to exposure to 20 students instead of more than that.
And do we need more staff in order to accomplish that?
In some cases, it looks like we do because of space. Some schools don't have the space to accommodate up to 9 or 12 of these types of groups. So depending on the number of students that would be in that cohort, that might be the case, yes.
And just to add on to that, to be super concrete, our analysis right now is looking at 6.5 EL teachers that would need to be added for the short term to be able to do what Carlos has described.
Thank you. And then I just have one more question for now, and it's with regards to the high school schedule and just trying to understand substantively the learning center model for Portland High. My understanding is that typically that's more of like a study hall period in a regular schedule. Will that specifically at Portland be a more substantive time? And yeah, I think, there's concern around high school students having, real opportunities to engage academically in person. So I'm wondering if you could go in, Aaron, talk a little bit more specifically with respect to Portland High School, what that time might look like.
And maybe I might invite, Principal Jepson to speak about kind of where, she's at with her leadership team, and planning for that time. Sheila, would you like to just kind of summarize where you guys are at and thinking about how you're, building, in terms of that structure?
Sorry, Mr. Atkinson?
Sorry. Oh. Hi, Aaron. Am I in?
You're in, Sheila. Yep.
Okay. Sorry. So, yeah, I'm happy to describe that a little more. And actually, this learning center concept is new for all of us. And we don't see it as a study hall opportunity as it's being fleshed out. We have put in our advisory a couple of days a week during learning center time. We also have, as we're developing it, that this will be an opportunity for teachers to call students in to see them for one-on-one support. It will be an opportunity for students to say, I need to meet with my math teacher for one-on-one support. And it's also, again, given our space limitations, I see it as an opportunity for teachers to say, well, I'd like to bring my class into the auditorium where they can have a larger number of students to view, to view something that they might have, done in class ordinarily, but just can't do remotely. So as we continue to develop that and have time in the next few weeks, I anticipate our grade level teachers and some of our content teachers will also really, the shape of the learning center will come more clearly. And I think there are lots of options, kind of endless opportunities for students during learning center time.
Thank you. And would it be possible to hear from either Dr. Ahmed or Ms. Dame about the plan for Deering in terms of using the learning center time?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. So pretty similar to what Principal Jepson said. I think, teachers could use it for small groups, for a science lab, for one-on-one instruction, as far as up to the point that our vacancy would allow. And we do have, information about the capacity of all of our rooms. Like Portland, we are also going to use that time for in-person advisories, hopefully one per grade level each week minimum. I also want to mention that we have a tool developed by the district's own Jeff Borland that allows us to schedule super nimbly, but it also allows us to keep track of usage. So our student engagement team, for instance, could say, this student has not used the Learning Center at all. Let's check in on them. And we do have those structures in place to raise a red flag if we're seeing a kid who's not using it at all. And they might have a good reason for that, but we could check in with them. So that's one layer. I guess a previous layer to that is that our teachers are very conscientious about booking students who are struggling or could use the Learning Center at all. So there's a couple different ways in which we're going to have eyes on our students and make sure that those who could benefit and whose parents want them using it are using it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess since we're talking about learning centers, I had a question about that as well. I guess since the grades 10 to 12 are going to be opening in remote mode, with the exception of the Learning Center, am I correct to say that there's no sort of remote academy option for the 10th to 12th graders? That's sort of the default that they're in. Okay. And if there are students, I guess, who maybe would have chosen that option, who aren't as comfortable with, or their families aren't as comfortable with them coming in person, will they be able to take advantage of the Learning Center model as well and get that, one-on-one support during that time through a Zoom meeting or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Nice to have a single word answer here. So I also had a question about the remote academy. I guess maybe I misunderstood or made this up, but I had thought that there was a thinking that, for this first initial 4-week period before we reconsider or before we consider the expansion of elementary to more days, that there was going to be a decision point to transition in or out of the remote academy at that time in October. Did I make that up? Is that something that was considered and not taken up, or? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
We've not considered that.
Okay. Sorry, maybe that was one that came out of my head. So we've gotten some emails about special programs, and in particular, I think the functional life skills program, and concerns from staff that there's not only a lot of students, but a lot of staff in those classrooms. And I'm wondering if there's need as we scale up for additional space for those classes.
Deb, do you want to speak to that directly?
Yeah. So we did take a look at the space needed for those programs, and we looked at the district floor plans for the recommended number of students in each of the classrooms, and then we took into account the number of adults that were going to be included in the classrooms as well. So for example, like in our bridge program, we have 1-to-1 staffing for all those students. So every time we have 3 students in a classroom, we have 3 adults. So we don't have any more, that we have those classrooms set up with just 2 to 3 students in them. So we're using every available space. We're using the, the OT PT area. We're using the 2 classrooms. We're using there's another smaller space that we're using for a couple of students in behind one of the classrooms, and we've asked for additional space for those areas where we need it.
Okay, great. And the other question I had was around the additional staff for elementary specials, for EL. I know we've got, and maybe this is jumping ahead to the finance portion of things, but we have some money that is slated to run out in December, and I'm wondering if we're going to be able to maintain these positions beyond that, or if that's really only available for the first semester, and then we'll have to rethink things in January.
That's right.
Thank you. That's all I had.
All right, Mr. Balfons.
Great, thank you. Yeah, my question is centered around scheduling, and this might be more for you, Superintendent Botana, just about whether or not the Group A students are receiving significantly less in-person classroom instruction. And this is just a little background that's based upon an email they received about the Group A, Group B schedule, and that Group A students will be attending on Mondays, and typically holidays are on or observed on Mondays. And so there was a concern about Group A students receiving significantly less in-person school days.
And we did look at that, and students who are attending on Monday and Thursday would have 67 days of instruction under our current schedule, and those who are attending on Tuesdays and Fridays would have 68. So there is not a significant difference.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Bondo.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to go back to the elementary special. I have a couple of questions for the staffing. I just need to be a little more details on that. We have, I heard Deborah mention about, I think, if I remember, 3 at the beach, I think, or 3 on the brief program, like 5 FTs than we need. But when I look up on the previous one, I see that we need at least 10 FTs to have a minimum of 45 minutes for block to be happening. So can I have more clarification around those staffing, and also as the hiring process? How are we thinking about if we have some teachers who are asking more accommodation, either for the elementary special and for the EOL teachers? So do we think that we need just those 2 FTs or 6.5, or we may need more than what we've been expecting right now?
I might suggest that we hold that for when we get to the staffing section, because that's when we're going to speak to that issue around accommodation. Is that okay? Okay.
Okay, that's fine. All right, and the second is my second question is on the sign-up form for remotely. Then I see the deadline is just so we may send it tomorrow on the 19th. So the deadline is on Monday 24th. So everything needs to be accessible through our website, or we're gonna have some hard copies, or we will have some translation. Because when I look at the deadline between tomorrow and Friday, we have the weekend, so it's a couple of days. So we expect to have the full, to reach out most of the parents. Some of the parents cannot access the website form. Do we have a different approach to have the parents getting those forms to sign up for?
Mm-hmm. I think I'll start, and then Aaron, if you want to add anything to that. But I mean, I would say one, so through our surveys, we have quite a bit of indication from families as to who's interested. So for that group, which I think will be, probably the majority of the group that signs up, we'll have that email confirmation, and we can use probably our phone system as well. And then for people who are wanting to sign up that have not indicated that they intend to do so yet, it will come out through email, and it will be available on the website. And then, Aaron, I don't know if we discussed, help me remember, I admit my brain's a little fuzzy right now, if there was any other strategies that we have in place yet.
No, those were the primary ones of, we're going to send out this communication, and just one more chance, given that we've had kind of 2 rounds of engagement already of, for folks to indicate interest in the program. So, wanted to follow in kind of board decision-making about our model, for reopening, wanted to ensure that there was at least one more opportunity for families to communicate interest.
All right. So my last question is about the hotspots. And I think I got a lot of not complaints, but some of the challenge, some of the community members and parents, they had a little hard time to have a strong, robust hotspots to try to access some of the streaming videos and navigating those internet systems. So why are we improving some of those hotspots? Or are we using the same companies or businesses who had provided previously?
We're using the same companies and businesses that we provided before. Admittedly, hotspots are not the same as the internet that you might have at home. So it is limited. It's enough for what we use, as our basic programming needs, but obviously it's not if you have multiple people that are using the hotspot and trying to stream and do other things at the same time. It is not the same bandwidth and capacity as something else.
Yeah. So that means going down, because we have our 10 to 12 will be mostly on the remotely. And we have some other disadvantaged students, and most are people of color students who's going to be really impacted the challenge with that. So what are we building some strategy around those improvements, or we just going to do what we have and figure it out?
Yeah, we don't have an alternative.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Mondo. Now, Mr. Burke.
Thank you. Getting my thoughts. I want to express gratitude. I mean, it's overwhelming how much work that you've all done, and it's just profound. So I just want to say thank you and ask some questions too. It's not exactly in the content area that we were just focused on, but remember Bondo's question connected me to something else. Question is, if we're asking families to screen for temperatures, will there be thermometers available to families that don't have them already through any of our partnerships or anything? Yes, I'm saying.
Yes, we're working on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Outdoor learning looks fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You'll know that I've been a big proponent of that. It's it's safer, up to 20 times safer. During the pandemic, to be outside, you've come a long way in the last 2 weeks. A lot of folks, the board knows and staff knows, I was working on a motion that I was planning on bringing forward tonight, and everything has been addressed in that. I mean, what happened between 2 weeks ago and the things that I was putting there and trying to share with staff to let you know where my thinking was, it's there. The only thing that we didn't get to, and you made this explicit, was like a firm commitment to amount of time that's going to be outside, and I understand the considerations that are there. I wish that we could do that, but I also understand that it's not really pragmatic to kind of put that kind of pressure on things right now. So I just want to say thank you and truly give you some applause for that. Really encouraging. The lunch concerns, I didn't hear us talk about that. That's come up particularly in elementary school, how long students are going to have to go without, food, and anything you'd like to comment on upon that?
Jane is here. She can add to this. We did vet the options with our administrators and believe that we are, we're having breakfast, we're having a substantive snack, and then we are giving the lunch to go. So we understand that it would be, ideal to be able to get lunch in there, but with a reduced school day, with the complexity of feeding a significant meal, I think it just we landed where we landed with the breakfast, snack, and to-go lunch.
Okay. Jane, I saw you come in for a second. Do you want to say something too?
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Okay. Understood. It's one of, do what we can. As we were talking about specials, I didn't hear us talk about the library in particular, and I believe that they're being considered as part of the specials programming. And I know there was, very specific proposals that came forth that seemed well thought out from the library staff. So I was hoping you could speak more to our library programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. I think that some of the librarians did put together a proposal to ensure that we still have access to the library. And so that meant in their proposal that they're not just running like a specials class. I'm actually meeting Eva is one of the people that worked on the design of that. And Jesse, who's here somewhere, our director of curriculum and instruction. There you are. Eva and I are meeting Friday, actually, to talk in more detail about implementation of that. There's some considerations in terms of what's assumed in that special schedule and where librarians play into that in relationship to the 10 FTE as, which would be required to get to the 45 for all 4 days. So there's a bunch of variables, but for the public to know, our librarians have put together some really awesome creative thinking that, would enable us to still have kids, utilize the library in some way. And so we're definitely leaning in to think about that with them while balancing this specials issue and all the resources that are needed to pull off that schedule. So those are the variables at play. But we're looking at that. But our meeting with her to talk in more depth is on Friday.
Great. I'm glad to see that's evolving, as so many things are. And then part of what I'm understanding, there was concerns at one point, at least from elementary level, specials teachers about the exposure profile. But would you say it's also true that their profile is similar to like a middle school teacher or others in the district? It may be unique compared within an elementary school, but it's not an outlier within the district as a whole in terms of our hybrid learning scenario.
Yeah, I think that would be fair. I have to admit, I haven't done like a numerical analysis, but I think that would be fair. And again, when, at least for me, when some specials teachers were raising concerns, that was prior to us being clear that we were going with this block schedule. So that's been an adjustment since the feedback and the concern to try to be responsive to that very understandable concern that, we agreed with, and therefore that's why we've adjusted how we would be scheduling that.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. 2 more questions. Can IELD students with IAPs and those in our Bridge, Breathe, and Beach programs choose full remote? And if so, how would that work for them?
Yes, all students can. I think that, and Deb and Carlos, I think you're here somewhere in this sea of tiles. There you are. So you can add to what I would say, but I would just say in general, all families have access to choosing remote academy if that's what they feel most comfortable with. And I think we would be looking at that schedule for how we work in what we call SDI, specially designed instruction, and additional therapies like OT or whatever the case may be. So they would have that, just like if we're in the fully read scenario, we need to have, an approach to provide those additional supports. We would just implement and activate those plans in the remote academy, which is, the schedule that I shared as a reflection of what would happen if we moved into red. I don't know, Deb, if you want to speak anything else, because I think,
Yeah, I guess I would just add, beyond just families opting for remote, we do have some rather medically fragile students within our district who will, medically, they will not be able to attend school. That's what I've heard from several parents already. I don't think it's more than a dozen students. But we are going to have those students, and we're going to have to figure out through the IEP process, how we're going to be able to meet their needs. It'll be homebound instruction or remote, or whatever it is. We'll have to provide for those students with medical needs, which is a little bit different than just the straight remote learning option.
Okay, I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Ms. Victor?
I just had one quick follow-up question around lunch, and I don't mean to keep on this one issue, but for the middle school students and the elementary schools that are on the later schedule, it is quite late for those kids to eat. I would imagine 2 or 2:15 by the time the elementary school students get home, and 3 or 3:15 for the middle school students. Correct me if those times are wrong. But is it possible to switch lunch and snack for those kids? So we provide them breakfast and lunch, and then they take home snack. I do really just worry about kids being that hungry or being very hungry when they haven't had lunch at the time, around a time that they're accustomed, even with a substantial snack, and how that might impact their ability to learn.
So I would like maybe for Jane to talk about what is in the snack, because I think that is, it's important for you to understand that. And then I do think that it's very challenging for us. The minute we get into a lunch setting, we will run into significant supervision issues for that meal. And so it just adds a huge layer of complexity. So Jane, can you talk about the snack, please?
We can make the snack what we need it to be. Typically, we would plan on 3 components of a meal, which would be a grain, a protein, and a fruit. Would be the typical snack within the day. If we feel that we need to expand that, that's something that we can look at doing and creating a menu for, since it is outside of the National School Lunch Program, the snack.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Morioni?
Thank you. I won't be long. I just wanted to follow up Ms. Mondo's question around the hotspots. And I just was reading an article today about it was a CNN article in Los Angeles. They are having all students, high school students, go back to school, but not the teachers. And they're doing it virtually so that the students, particularly those that didn't have access to the internet, could be working in the schools with the internet and the computer. So having read that and based on that, I'm thinking of Ms. Bondo's point around the hotspots. Have we considered that the Learning Center time, if we can identify those students that don't have very good internet access or capability, they could be hopefully brought in to use that Learning Center time and use the internet and computer at that time. It's just an additional thought. Thanks.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Javier, before we go into the community partners, just want to acknowledge that it is getting late, and I'm hearing from board members a need for us to have a discussion about what our, how we feel about our business meeting starting so late, and a discussion about potentially postponing agenda items and even this vote. I just want to acknowledge that because of the time that is on everyone's mind, and I would like us to have that discussion here in the open as a board and decide that together. But I'm troubled by two things. Number one, that we might not be able to start that discussion until very, very late because we still have what seems to be a significant amount of, not significant, but some part of the presentation that's still going to take some time. So I'm bringing this up now just to maybe pause and get some feedback from board members on how to manage this before it gets too late and we do lose board members before we have that discussion. So can we just kind of go around real quick and please give me a quick summary of where you are on this and any advice on how to manage it. Ms. Trevorrow?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for stopping to have this conversation. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay on very much longer. We've been going at this for over 5 hours now, and I have an obligation to work, and there's no way I can be here until 1 o'clock this morning, so thank you.
Ms. Victor?
I guess my concern is that it is 11:18 and we haven't given the public an opportunity to participate in this process yet. Like many of us, many of the members of the public have work to go to in the morning. So I don't have a solution. I think we need to get this done very soon because we're talking about staff being back on Monday. There's so much uncertainty right now. And I think everyone from staff to families need the clarity of what our plan is. So I don't like the idea of delaying, but I'm good to stay for as long as it takes, but I am very concerned that at such a late hour, we haven't given the public an opportunity to participate in this conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Ms. Morioni?
I concur with Ms. Trevorrow. I will not be able to stay on again for another 1 a.m., 2 a.m. meeting. I think honestly, it's a bit disrespectful to our staff and to our community to expect people to stay on that late. I understand that we're trying to get staff back on Monday. I would be happy to have another meeting Thursday night, Friday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. But I'm actually a little surprised that Superintendent thought we would be able to cover all this within 2 hours because each of these are very in-depth. And as you know, we like to dig in deep to understand them better. And we've gotten so many questions from the community. So I, based on, again, respecting our staff, most importantly, and again, our board members, I think, again, a 6-hour meeting to hear very, very important, in-depth, and amazing amount of work you've done. I would rather see us end with our end of our workshop and then move our vote to another night. Thank you.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes. So, I look at the number of attendees. We're at 188. If I recall, at its high, we were at 300 plus. Obviously, I'd want the public to be able to comment, and it doesn't seem like we're going to be getting there anytime soon. So my thought would be to finish up the workshop and then postpone to another day. So we not only we can have an opportunity to reflect, but also so that the public can also reflect and then also make comment as well. I guess my question would be, how much time is left for the workshop tonight?
And then Mr. Burke.
Thank you. I think we should finish the workshop. I think we should postpone the business meeting till Thursday, begin it with public comment, and finish our procedures then.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes, I would like to echo Ms. Brooke, and I feel like to respect to the attendees, and we didn't have a chance for them to make any public comment. At least we can finish the workshop so we have a clear idea and postpone the business and the vote, or maybe Thursday or Friday for another meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yeah, just I'm on the same page. I think I really want to respect the public involvement, and also would not feel comfortable voting on this really important issue without the board members being all available to cast their votes. So, and I'm in favor of postponing after the workshop.
All right, thank you. So I guess a couple of things that need to happen. If we are going to postpone our meeting, we would need to do it during. Actually, Ms. Thompson, did you wanna?
I didn't get.
You're getting kicked out, so I know you just came back.
I'm losing connection, so I apologize. I think Time Warner was trying to give me a signal here. So I would concur. I don't think I've said anything differently than anyone else has said. I think at this point, at 11:30 at night, and we've already lost 160 public members from our high. So I appreciate all the hard work, but as well. I think I'm just about at my max, and I'm sure staff are as well. And but I want to hear from the public, and I think at this point, to hear from the public and then also make a good, solid decision, I would concur and postpone. Thank you.
Ms. Figdor?
If we're going to postpone, can we make sure that in fact we all are available on Thursday and can reconvene? And then also, can we make a commitment to starting after maybe the superintendent summarizes and where things stand, that we start with the first substantive piece agenda item is starting with the public comment period?
All right, thank you. So I'm sorry. So what I was saying before, a couple of things that came up right there was just trying to figure out how much longer do we have of the workshop. It seems like most board members feel comfortable postponing the action. So I guess the question to superintendent is to reflect on what urgency we have or what the timeline has. As far as what day this week would work, let's kind of just pause on that just for a little bit, because there's a DABC and BLAC meetings Wednesday and Thursday, which includes a handful, if not all, of the board members here. And then I've already heard from a couple of you that Friday doesn't work. So without starting to throw days and times out there, let's first hear from the superintendent in terms of the timeline and urgency, and also how much we have left on the workshop. Javier?
We have 2 sections left on the workshop. They are substantial. Well, actually, we have 4 sections left on the workshop with the community partnerships and family engagement, and then budget and staffing. Staffing is a gigantic part of this equation, and so like for us to walk through won't take that long, but obviously, as we've learned through this process, every answer generates additional questions. So, it is largely dependent on how many questions you have. And I suspect you will have many, as you have had throughout the night. So it's hard for me to say that this is like, 20 minutes or an hour and 50 minutes. I'm not the best, at guessing these. I've already lost a couple side bets on this tonight. So I don't think that, I can't tell you. I think there is substantial amount of information still to be covered tonight in the workshop. In terms of the urgency of this, we're bringing staff back on Monday. And, we have negotiations with one of our unions tomorrow, which are predicated on, knowing what we're doing when we start the school year. So it has a tremendous amount of urgency for our work. And, I understand the challenges. I understand wanting to hear from the public. I understand all of that. But I also want you to understand our urgency to have this session. You asked an enormous number of questions that we are attempting to address. And, as we do that, that's generating additional questions. So we need to dedicate the time to this. There's no getting around it. We've spent, countless hours getting ready for this. And, it takes time to go through this. So.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent. So my, what I'm going to, first of all, I acknowledge that I asked the wrong person to give me an idea of how much longer we have, but sorry, it's just a little levity. What I'm inclined to say based on what board members just shared, the one piece that seems to be really, really urgent is that bargaining unit tomorrow. Like you said, there's hanging on a lot of what we're going to decide here tonight. But putting that aside, board members obviously feel really sensitive about the lack of public engagement tonight, given the new information that we're sharing. I would like for us to look at our calendars and see if Friday is an option, and then kind of look at the superintendent and say, given our time constraints, Friday, obviously not as ideal as today, which would be a Wednesday morning vote, but punch holes on the idea of doing it Friday night, I guess is what I'm asking. Board members, that's for you as well, not just the superintendent.
I would have a very hard time making Friday work. Could we postpone the DABC?
I'm sure we could.
The ABC is Wednesday, right?
DABC is Thursday.
Thursday? Can we, Ms. Morioni? Excuse me.
Yeah, I can make myself available Friday.
Can I ask Ms. Trevorrow, because I know that she knows these things upside down, inside out. Do you know offhand what our requirements are for posting what would be an emergency meeting? Is it 24 hours?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's something like that. It's made to fit an emergency. So
yeah, but I think it is 24 hours. So
it is.
That makes, yeah.
So
put us at Thursday. So I think, clearly we could postpone, cancel the DABC meeting. It's posted and noticed, and I'm sure that there will be, upset over that as well. But that's what we would have to do.
Okay. Wait, I'm trying to. All right. So I guess Thursday is what we're looking at.
Just getting something from our attorney that says 24 hours notice is not required, so we could potentially do it tomorrow. I am currently committed to the Portland Press Herald for an event, so I would have to cancel that, which I don't feel good about, but I just want to be transparent about that.
So Thursday is the evening that's floating to the top right now. We're not making a decision right now, but tentatively, does Thursday sound doable for everyone else? Or did anyone already say Thursday's not good?
Thursday good because I already asked Mr. Costa to run the meeting for the DABC because I had something come up. So I can't.
So you're not good Thursday? All right. So I think that whether we do it tonight, Thursday, or Friday, we're not going to have a full board. So I think that sounds like a given. So that just consider that, guys, as you decide.
Who's guys in that sentence?
All right, I'm so sorry. Board members. Nothing. So I mean, again, if we carry on for tonight, which doesn't sound like anyone wants to do it, we won't do it with a full board. If we could do it as early as tomorrow, how does that sound to everyone? I can't. Okay, I see thumbs up. Can we? Okay, let me rephrase it. Can anyone not make it tomorrow?
If we do tomorrow, can we do a 5 o'clock on the earlier side?
AM, sure.
Yeah, right.
Stick around. All right. I mean, I'm seeing a handful of board members say they'll make themselves available at any time, any evening. Put me in that category, including for tomorrow.
I will make myself available also anytime.
Are we talking about tomorrow right now? Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay.
So
is there anyone that cannot make it on Wednesday? All right, seeing none. All right, so and now procedure-wise, what do we need to do to make that official? Do we need to start our meeting and have a motion for that to happen?
Since Bruce is apparently watching this, I wonder, Bruce, if you wouldn't mind weighing in on that issue. I don't know if you're if you're watching on Facebook or if you're in the queue here. We could. I see you here.
Before we do that, Javier, before we do that, just because I don't want to have one of those one question leads to another one. The intention is to finish the workshop tonight. We're only talking about the action. So the intention is for this workshop to be finished tonight and only postpone the agenda, the business meeting items. I just want to be clear that that's the way that I'm proposing this. Javier, go ahead.
So what I was going to do is I was going to ask Bruce Smith, our legal counsel, to join us to just help us understand, given that we're in the workshop, given that we've not formally convened, do we need to take any action at this point, or could we just, postpone the meeting and resume it tomorrow? So just start, at whatever time it is that we determine. So I'm going to promote him into the panel. Hopefully this is the right Bruce, and we'll see. Counselor, are you with us?
Is he on? Oh, yeah.
You hear me now?
We can.
For some reason the video's not working, but that's probably just as well. I'm not at my best at midnight. So the question is whether you can continue the meeting. I think you could simply vote to recess the meeting until, 5 p.m. Wednesday, or recess the workshop. And it's really just the same meeting with a recess of very short time, actually, less than 24 hours. So a motion to recess the meeting until 5 p.m. Wednesday, August 19th. And you would want to notify the media right away by email that that's been done, so that and also post it on your website so the public knows.
So to clarify what I said a moment ago, and I wrote it on the chat. We're talking about continuing the workshop today and then postponing the business meeting. That's because if that's not what you guys are understanding, be clear about it. Are we good with that? Is anyone not good with that?
I missed that because I'm getting like bombarded with texts, so I'm sorry, but I missed it altogether.
Yeah. So what I understand we're going to do is continue with the workshop today and complete it, and then have a motion to postpone the business meeting agenda in its entirety.
And I guess my question for Bruce is, we're in a workshop, so we've not even convened into the business meeting. So can we take an action in the workshop?
Well, you're effectively leaving the workshop to simply take a motion to recess the meeting. I mean, the other option would be to adjourn the meeting and to schedule another meeting for tomorrow, but I think it makes sense to treat this as a recess, to recess the meeting until 5 p.m. So well, if you could finish the workshop, I guess that's up in the air now, but when the workshop is done, you could then take a motion to continue the business meeting until 5 p.m. tomorrow. Or you could stop now and take a motion, go out of the workshop and take a motion to recess the workshop until...
Yeah, so Bruce, just to be clear, our workshop, I never called the meeting to order. The workshop was done separate of the actual business meeting. So it was scheduled to have a workshop followed by the business meeting. So we have not called it to order, which I think is why we're asking if we can take a motion to recess it before having called it to order.
I understand what you're saying. To me, I don't think the difference is significant. You are in a public meeting now, though you call it a workshop and you don't call it a business meeting. But I think you should treat it the same way you would a business meeting, in the sense of saying you're either going to adjourn it or recess it and resume it tomorrow at 5 p.m. And I wouldn't get too hung up on those technicalities.
Yeah, no, and trust me, I normally don't. Ms. Victor, you have a question?
Perhaps it's after we resolve this. It's about once, for the agenda tomorrow, could we move the section, could we get right to the public comment period? So to the motion, and then public comment on the motion as soon as possible. So my specific request is that we move the update on the FY21 budget to after we make our decision and vote on the reopening plan.
And usually the way that that's done is the board asks for the sense of the group, and if the group is in support, nobody objects to it, and we move personnel items all the time and things like that. So,
what's the sense of the group? Would other board members be open to moving the update on the FY21 budget to later in the meeting so that we could prioritize giving the public an opportunity to participate in this conversation? Ms. Trevorrow, I'm just looking at you as the finance chair. Does that work for you?
It does. I think that procedurally we would just make a motion to take the item out of order at the beginning of the meeting when we start tomorrow.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
And I guess so I feel good about that part. I want to give you guys another chance. So what we have left of the workshop is, like Javier said, substantive, and there will be a lot of information shared. So last time, is anyone not okay with us not continuing the workshop today? Is that the worst way to ask that question? Is anyone not okay tonight?
Roberto, but I'm gonna log off because I can't. I have to be up at 5:30. So I know many of you do, but I'll have to log off.
Okay. So as far as continuing the workshop, same thing, guys. Give me your thoughts. Given that there is a lot of workshop left. Ms. Bondo.
Yes. And I feel like, I think that's my opinion. I feel like we can recess and continue the workshop tomorrow, because when I look at the staffing, it's really a little more deeper. I think having a more fresh mind, open up and be ready to absorb, because we have a lot to absorb already. And I think when I look at the time, we're going to go over midnight, and then we're going to miss maybe two or three board members who needs to understand at least the end of the workshop and be able to cast their vote tomorrow. So this is what I'm thinking, we can at least recess what we left for the workshop tomorrow, so we can come fresh and ready to go with the staffing and everything, community partner and everything else. Because the growth part is the staffing, and I think we need to have our brain and ready to get everything in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Ms. Morioni?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ms. Bondo. This is all very, very heavy, important work for us to understand and for our community here. I apologize again to the community that's waited this long to be a part of it, but I really do think that just need to make sure we've heard it very clearly so we can factor it all into our vote. So I would agree. Thank you.
So I feel like we're hearing a lot of consistent a lot of consistent comments here. My sense is that the right move here is to pause at this time, recess it, and pick this up right where we are today, tomorrow, starting at 5 p.m. Is that a relatively good summary of what the sentiments are? I want to. I'm sorry. I was going to say those are the sentiments of the board, at least. Yes, Bruce.
Mr. Chair, just briefly, the law does not require 24 hours notice. I just checked the board policy. The board policy says whenever practicable, 24 hours notice will be provided of an emergency meeting. I think that proviso, whenever practicable, does permit you to go ahead and recess this meeting until 5 tomorrow. But I just wanted to point that out to you. I hadn't looked at the policy before.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, so I'm feeling relatively confident that that's the right move at this time. Any strong objections against that, Superintendent?
No.
All right, so let's get a motion. Can anyone put a motion, please, to recess our meeting until tomorrow at 5 p.m.? Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Balfons. Can we do a roll call on that, Javier?
Sure. Let's just find the So I don't know where my link to the, I don't know where it is. I
Looks like
apologize.
Aaron's got his hand up,
I
Javier.
was not ready for that, so I apologize.
Superintendent Aaron has his hand raised. He can do it.
Okay. Awesome. Aaron, you want to call the roll?
Yeah, I need access to the spreadsheet. I have the link. It's under the.
All right, give me 1 second. I'm getting there. I just was not logged in, apparently. Here we go.
Can you maybe just look at the screen and pick the board?
I got it. I got it.
No, Janet. All right.
I got it.
Can I? I'm sorry, Javier. Just real quick before we just so that the public knows that, because we throw the acronyms around, right? The DABC that we're rescheduling tomorrow. That's the District Advisory Building Committee.
No, District Advisory Building Committee is not until Thursday, so we're not tomorrow's not rescheduling anything.
Okay, so tomorrow does not require any rescheduling.
No, it does not.
It just has me blowing the Press Herald off.
Good. It's got me blowing dinner with my wife, but that's all right.
Okay, Mr. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mr. Balfons.
Yes.
Ms. Bondo.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ms. Figdor.
No.
Ms. Morioni.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow.
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez.
No. All right, so that motion passes with a 7-2 vote. So I guess we're taking a recess at 11:48 p.m. and we'll pick it up tomorrow, 5 p.m. Same bat channel. Thank you, everyone, for your attention tonight and sticking here so late. We'll try to recap it tomorrow when we start and acknowledge as clearly as possible what we've done procedurally today. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and your engagement today. Obviously, we're not done, so I'll see you tomorrow.